and then Headless Doll comes in. And then all of a sudden, they have another huge damage multiplier, and all these things
And
stat.
headless doll is bugged. I just found out today.
Hello and welcome everyone. Today I'm here with Mark Venturelli, the lead developer from Rogue Snail. He's recently been working on the game Hellclock, which, if you've seen videos on my channel, some of the builds, you're probably pretty familiar with. It's a roguelike action RPG that I've had a ton of fun with. So, I'm very glad to have you here, Mark. Tell me a little bit about yourself, what you do, and how you do it.
Hi, Tenkiei. Glad to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. Hello, my name is Mark. I'm the CEO and creative director of Rogue. I've been acting as the main systems designer for Hellclock, and I've been making games professionally for 17 years.
That's a long time. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm that old.
What was the first game you worked on?
The first game I worked on as a professional was Dungeonland. It's right over there. It released in 2013 on Steam. And unfortunately, it's no longer available. It was a very hard lesson on making online games and working with some publishers. So the game was shut down and it was no longer available on Steam, which is gutting. But yeah, it was a very good experience, and it was already like that dungeon crawling game, as you can tell from the name.
Yeah. And what about the first thing that you didn't work on necessarily professionally, but just period?
I used to, I think, as most game designers probably, I would be the DM on our Dungeons and Dragons group, tabletop RPG group in general. Um, but the first time I actually designed something was I created the whole rule set and the universe for us to play. I was 14, 15 years old. I wrote a whole rule book. It's like a 70-page PDF with just text because I can't draw. So it was
Oh, I know
just
that
a
feeling.
rule book. and and it was just like a really kind of like cyberpunk slash post-apocalyptic thing, mostly inspired by Fallout, which at the time I was really into Fallout 1 and Fallout 2. There was no Fallout 3 at the time.
Yeah. I don't really have a programming background, but I did take a couple of game development courses in college, one of which was game development in Flash. And I still remember I made just a single level, and it mostly worked. I was able to move the character around. I was able to kill the enemies. I could even dodge the projectiles. And unless you let it run for a really long time, nothing broke.
Yeah, that's a great feeling, man. And I think making levels is a great start. Like the first thing I did in terms of video games was a level for Counter Strike. I love Counter Strike. I used to be a professional Counter Strike player in the 1.6 era. And the first video game experience I had with designing something was the Counter Strike like Hammer, which is the level editor for Counter Strike. I made a little Counter Strike level, which I never officially finished, but it was playable. It was just like kind of grade box and ugly.
Yeah, I think in terms of level editors and stuff, my first experience was Age of Empires 2. That was when I was like, wait, this
There you
is a
go.
thing.
There you go.
One thing that I noticed about Hellclock back when I played the demo is the setting is quite unusual. It's set in the War of Canudos. I haven't seen any other games with a similar setting. Can you tell me a little bit about why you chose that setting and the history of the War of Canudos?
It was the first time in my career that I made something with like Brazilian history and Brazilian culture on the forefront. And I feel like it was the first time I felt ready for it after a lot of experience and a lot of ship games. And I think it's really challenging for me at least as a game creator to have your story, like your country, your culture in the game, and making sure that it's not like the major thing, right? For me, that was the challenge. I wanted to do something that would appeal to a global audience, and for that to happen, like we couldn't make the Brazilian history and Brazilian culture be the main selling point of the game, because the rest of the world does not care about that. Like who cares? Only Brazilian people care about that. So for Hell Clock, it was the first time I felt ready to, okay, like I think I know how to make video games now. And maybe we can make something that is really appealing. And then we throw Brazilian culture and Brazilian history and Brazilian language there for like as a side thing, not as the main appeal of. And I think it worked beautifully. And the setting for Hell Clock, uh, like I am Northeastern Brazilian. I was born in Northeast Brazil, which is a region that has a lot of issues, a region that historically has suffered a lot, and there's a lot of prejudice against Northeast Brazil and the rest of the country as well. So, for me personally, being able to portray Canudos, which is such an important story for the history of Northeast Brazil, is like it's very personal and it's very like uh, uh, important. Like I think I always enjoy making every single game that I release, of course, but I think that during the making of Hellclock, it was the first time that I felt that we were creating something important. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
it's usually just like funny cartoon monsters exploding on the screen, and it's fun, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think with Hellclock, it was the first time that I did the funny exploding monsters actually feel important for them.
Yeah, and I definitely felt that playing through the game, there was a weight to the story. Though I do like how you ended things on a hopeful note.
Yeah, I mean, we have to, right? We say in Brazil that like Brazilians never give up, and yeah, man, like you have to believe that the future is going to be better than the past. I think that whenever we investigate our past, there's a lot of really really horrible stuff in there that is still lingering to this day. You have to be able to be hopeful about the future. I think our role as artists is to help tell these kinds of stories so that people know their own history, because a lot of Brazilians even don't know their own history, right? But also to say, hey, like this is really bad, but like it really doesn't have to be this bad. You know?
Yeah, and the game does a very good job of that.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that because I think when like Swami and I we wrote the story, especially for me, I can't speak for Swami. He's a very chill guy. He's a history professor and he just loves all the nerdy details about the story. But for me, it came a lot from a place of anger. Like I think it's a very angry story. There's a lot of rage in there, and I think it kind of shows the point. But I'm very glad to hear that the hopeful notes also came through. It's not only like anger from start to finish.
Yeah, and I could very much feel that anger. I mean, if it's a revenge story, you got to have some anger there.
Yep, yep,
Yeah.
yep. Like we tried to make like Act One is like a Tarantino movie, and Act Two we kind of still is a little bit, but we kind of show more of the world and more of the story, and we kind of show the point of view of the antagonists a little bit more, with the Minister of War and stuff like that. And then Act Three, we just go in straight like psychedelics, philosophy mode.
Yep. The story wrapped up in a lot of ways, or at the very least, it reached a conclusion. But the
Yeah.
game's going to be getting an expansion next year. Where do you plan to go with the story from here?
So the story is done. We will not be adding to it. So the expansion is actually a different story. It's not even going to be in Brazil. So the first war, we still have to announce that, right? So I don't want to spoil it too much, but it will take place in Paraguay, in the horrible, horrible war of Paraguay between Paraguay, Brazil, and Argentina.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. I guess it's very weird to say, oh, yes, I'm looking forward to learning more about this horrible war, but I'm looking forward to the storytelling.
Yeah, I mean, this was different for me because I'm not the main writer on the story this time. It's Pedro Falcão, who was the story designer on Relevant Country. Of course, we did collaborate to make sure that the tone is still the same, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's his story, not mine, and I'm trying to keep myself away from a lot of the smaller details, so I can have like more of an outsider's perspective when giving him feedback and stuff like that. But I think it's pretty cool. I think it's going to explore more of Pajou as a character, more of his past and more of his like youth and stuff like that. It touches a lot of the same kind of pain points that we do in the Canudos story, but I think it goes to new places and it's really come together nicely. I'm really excited to see people experiencing that.
Yeah. And I think a lot of those pain points will resonate with people just across the world. Even growing up in America, I've seen some similar things. And so it's a pretty universal story.
Yeah, for sure, man. Like all of us Americans, right? Either North America, Central, South America, we all had some similar experiences being the colony of the slave trade, of the slave trade, of the racism and stuff like that. Like all of this is part of the DNA of the Americas today.
Mhm.
Okay?
Next up, I want to talk a little bit more about the gameplay and some of the themes there, where Hellclock is a roguelike ARPG, and I can see all of the ARPG influences: Grim Dawn, Diablo, Path of Exile. The roguelike ones are a bit more subtle. I certainly recognize that the blessing system is somewhat like Hades, which I think many roguelikes copy, borrow, take inspiration from. But what are some of the other roguelikes that you and the team have played, and how did they influence Hellclock?
Well, I was noticeably publicly said that I don't play Hades. Like I barely played it. On my last days off, I tried to play it a little bit. I didn't make it far. Like kind of the style. Like it's a great game, but I'm a very picky gamer and this kind of stuff that I really get into. Uh, the same reason why I don't get into Souls likes, for example. Like I know the Souls games are really good games, and just not for me. I think the same thing for Hades. Like I think Hades is an excellent game. It's just not for me. But it is for a lot of people on the team. So I can definitely tell you that Hades was a very big influence. Like I said, I can't really give you details of how Hades has influenced the game because my like I couldn't tell, right? My colleagues were coming up with ideas and things like that. I don't know how far those influences were Hades, you know. On my side, I think probably the roguelike that influenced me the most, I don't think it shows a lot on Health Hub, to be honest, is Spelunky. Because Spelunky was basically the game that popularized the modern roguelike or roguelike, right? Roguelike, because we didn't have progression. Um, and I was obsessed with Spelunky. And also, it got me into learning how to code in Game Maker because it was an open source in Game Maker.
That's
But I
awesome.
don't think, yeah, like Spelunky was genius, right? Derek is a freaking genius.
Yeah.
And but I think probably the game that influenced me the most in terms of it's not really a roguelike. People call them bullet patterns, right? But it's
Hmm.
probably Vampire Survivors.
Ah.
Vampire Survivors really like it gave me that edge. I remember playing it the first time, like in the first day when it came up, and it wasn't really the monster of popularity that it is right now, right? And I
Hmm.
remember playing that and just feeling that power surge of the action RPG and starting to get like a build together and starting to blast the screen. And I was like, this feels like playing like PoE. Like, what is this? Like, this is genius.
Yeah, it does a bit.
And
I discovered Vampire Survivors pretty late. I came across it when NoClip had their documentary on the making of. I was like, wait, how have I not heard of
yeah,
this?
that
This
was
is awesome.
where were you hiding? Yeah, no, this game was man like this. I'll tell you, Vampire Survivors. It was a game development game.
Hmm.
Like all of my game development friends would like independently refer to me like you have to play this like because in game dev like there's rarely new ideas, right? Almost everything in game development is you're taking ideas that already exist, you put a little spin on it. You're always standing on shoulders with giants, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes something that is more than just a little step, something that is more of a leap, right? And those moments are really rare. I think Hades was definitely one of those games, a generational game. Uh, and I think Vampire Survivors as well. I think when Vampire Survivors, it was so interesting, the kind of stuff that they were doing and felt so fresh in its familiarity because it had a lot of familiar elements, right?
Yes.
But it wasn't standing on the shoulder of giants. It was like rocket jumping on the shoulders of giants. You know, it was when this kind of stuff happens, at least my circle of game development friends, we tend to notice. Like we tend to look at that and say, like, look at this, like this is inspiring, this is cool, like how cool is this? Right?
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know that many game developers, but even the content creators I know, the players, there are some games that everyone talks about. Like Expedition 33, for example. Everyone was talking about it. Admittedly, maybe that's because the minute I mentioned it, I wouldn't shut up about it. But, everyone was talking about it. Yeah, that makes sense. And I can definitely see some of the inspirations there, where in a lot of the levels, you have these narrow corridors and a huge horde of enemies walks towards you. And none of those enemies are particularly threatening. They're not really there to kill you. They're there to be cannon fodder that you can mow down and see all those numbers
Exactly.
as your skill just kind of
Exactly.
cascades through.
Exactly. And when we were designing the game originally, there were a lot of influences. I think Vampire Survivors coming late. We were already like over 2 years of development at that point, if I'm not mistaken. I might be getting the dates wrong, but it was like the game was very playable, and there was a lot of stuff already done the first time we saw Vampire Survivors. Uh, and it just split. Like we didn't have the blasting system, for example, before that. So even though it looks like a Hades thing, I can say that there is probably way more of a Vampire Survivors influence. I can have the blessings there, and
Okay.
it made a huge difference in the game overall. And it pivoted the game away from whatever we were doing before, doing the prototype stages for sure.
Hmm.
Like it really helped because we're already trying to do that, right? It was funny because we're trying to, hey, what if PoE but fast,
Yeah.
right? Uh, and then I play that, okay, like this is something. And of course, like I never tried to, like I always try to find my own way of doing stuff. Like even when we try and take heavy influence from something, we try to avoid just Control C, Control V,
Yeah.
because I don't think that's ever good for the game. Like it has to make sense for what you're making and from what your vision is. And I feel like we got the Vampire Survivors influence in a way that was very much ours. To the point that you don't play our game and think, oh, this is a clone of Vampire Survivors
Yeah.
at all. Yeah.
Absolutely. In fact, I hadn't been thinking about it until you brought it up. And now that you have, I'm like, oh, yeah.
I think this is really cool because I personally like it as an artist. I see this as a compliment because sometimes I feel like I'm stealing too much from the game, and then I realize that people don't even notice that the game is an influence. For example, Dungeonland One, like Dungeonland, my first game, it was basically Left for Dead with with dungeons, right?
Okay.
And it was very Left for Dead, like for me at least. Right? Because I was trying to do at a design level the same things that Left for Dead did, but just applied to a different kind of genre. And to me, it was almost overt. I was like, shit, like people are gonna say that this is too inspired by Left for Dead, and nobody ever mentioned it. And every time I say that, hey, this is basically Dungeon Left for Dead, people are like, oh, and that is, I take that as a compliment because for me, that is the sign of a good creative process. Like I said, there is nothing, act, there's nothing really new under the sun, right? Everything is like new spins or a new point of view on ideas that have been around since the inception of mankind trying to create stuff, right? We're just like putting different spins on things,
Yeah.
and being able to do that in video games this way is very, very rewarding. For sure.
Yeah. I mean, even looking at Vampire Survivors, it was heavily based off of Magic Survival, which itself drew heavily from old arcade games.
Yep. Yep.
Now,
And even
in
like Diablo, right? It's funny to make a Diablo roguelike because
yeah,
Diablo was rogue at some
yeah,
point, right?
yeah,
And then it created a new genre from that. And now here we are trying to put like it's so interesting. It's like I don't know anything about biology, so I'm probably gonna butcher all the terms here. But it's like when the evolution diverges, right, on the
hmm,
tree, and you have like this animal creates like two very different animals out of it,
yep,
and they meet afterwards and have like a hybrid son again.
yeah.
It feels like basically like roguelites and ARPGs. They went in separate ways in the evolution, and then we tried to put them back together again.
I think seasonality being added to ARPG has really helped with that. Because if you think about it, an ARPG season is just a really long 3-month roguelike run.
Yes,
And
I
if you're,
agree. I agree. I agree.
yeah,
And it's so genius to have like I think the biggest thing that we owe Path of Exile was popularizing the idea. Of course, Diablo was the one, Diablo 2, right? Was the latter.
mm-hmm,
But I think PoE really popularized the idea of the ladder of the season,
yeah,
right? And a lot of other big games took notes, and that got ingrained into culture. Because a lot of what we do in game design, culture is a really part of it. Because culture dictates what you can and cannot do because of player expectations, right?
mm-hmm,
And I think starting over in ARPGs is always more interesting, and that was one of the main reasons why Ascension, for example, is for me such a cool thing about Hellclock. And most players don't even give Ascension a chance because it sounds so scary and it's just so culturally alien to them. And I think seasons and leagues are just a great accepted cultural way for players to think it's all right to start again and have a fresh start in the game, and that is so healthy, so healthy in my opinion.
yeah. My first reaction to Ascension was, I don't like this. I'd been progressing my build and now it's all gone. But after playing it more, I much prefer Ascension because I like restarting and because I like the fact that I can get, oh, this unique's really good. I'm just going to add this.
Exactly,
This is my build now. The piece that was
exactly,
missing was being able to respec constellations. Before that, it was a little iffy to me because you'd get something cool, but you couldn't use it because you didn't have the constellations. Now you can
it's
just
still
go,
it
well,
still have a lot more problems than that in my opinion. Yeah, it's still I don't consider Ascension really good right now. I think it's promising. uh but yeah, but thanks for the kind words. I still think it's kind of bad, but I also prefer it to the main one for sure.
yeah. And it does something right that the roguelike modes, if you will, in a lot of ARPGs like Infernal Hordes in Diablo 4 or Sanctum in Path of Exile do wrong, which is in those games, your build is the same.
Yep.
And a game is not a roguelike to me unless my build changes significantly every single run.
There you go. That's it. Like and the way that you describe seasons is exactly what we tried to do with Hellclock originally. Like Hellclock was a big Ascension game. Then we pivoted away from that more and more. And then we made Ascension into that. And we consider like your entire run of Ascension kind of your roguelike run, right? We
Yeah.
call it the meta run. It's funny how Ascension being this longer roguelike run, right? That takes a few hours instead of a few minutes. It makes it closer to Rogue, right? The original Rogue, which are longer plays as well. Like you don't play unless you die in the first moves. But I don't know if you played the OG Rogue or
No,
any of the
I'm just a little bit too young for that, but I did play. There's a game called Castle of the Winds. This
right.
really old freeware game, kind of based off of Rogue, kind of Dungeons and Dragons. Same thing where it'd take you a few hours unless you died early on.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's funny how things go like kind of a flat circle kind of thing, you know?
Yeah.
Like suddenly Ascension feels a little bit like a really modern road, which
Mm-hmm.
is it's beautiful in some ways. Honestly.
Yeah. So with that in mind, where do you plan to take the end game from here? What are you going to change about Ascension, and what are you going to add on top to round out the end game systems?
So for the vertical end game, the campaign, we have Endless Nightmares planned. We're already working on it right now. It's going to come with the expansion. It's not going to be paywall. So if you want the game, you get Endless Nightmares for free. And it's basically mapping done in the Hellclock style. Um, I don't want to spoil it too much, but the idea is to add a lot more variety to the experience. Because right now, I think the end game on 1.1 is in a decent spot. I think item progression is good. The build variety has greatly increased. We still have a lot of work to do in that, but I think we made huge progress. Uh, but at least for me, I don't think it's fun to farm on the Hell Clock because you're always doing the same acts. It feels like OG Diablo 2 or just like resetting the same map over and over to farm it,
Yep.
which is okay for like older gamers, but I don't think it's okay for the majority of new players. Um, so our main concern is making more random, more varied, more choices that you make which are interesting and meaningful as you grind, as you farm. So those all those things are coming to nightmares. Uh, I don't know if we're gonna have the time to be honest, but I would love to have like some pinnacle activities as well, like some really difficult bosses or some really difficult dungeon and whatever to really push your build and have like a final goal. Right now, Void is doing that. Uh, I can't wait to get rid of it because it works. It works, but it's just so lazy, you know. It's just so like, oh, it's the same game again, but this time with more numbers, right? We
Yeah.
did put a little bit of a change there with the timer, like we did. We wanted to make it a little bit different, right? So we tried to do that with the time. I think it's kind of interesting, but it's not like the coolest thing in the world. That you get less time, but then you get more drops, and you have that like constant attrition of time on Void. But honestly, I just can't wait to get rid of it. I think we can do much better if we actually have the time and the resources to create a pinnacle activity for Hellclock. Not sure if that's coming on the expansion, maybe a little bit later. But it is what it is. And for Sanction, we just want to have again more variety in there. I think the vision for Ascension was never for it to be replaying the campaign, was for it to use the endgame biomes. So Ascension is going to use the same biomes as we have on Under Nightmare. So every time you play Ascension, it's not always gonna be like, okay, how do I beat the jailer, right?
Hmm.
And then I beat the merchant.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of boring. So Ascension is gonna be much more random. Uh, and also we're gonna borrow. I want to borrow more tricks from the playbook of Deck Builder to make Ascension more dynamic and more interesting, and to make sure that you have more. We're not forcing you into creating different builds every time, but you have more obvious opportunities to do that, right?
Hmm.
So not only in terms of drops, but also in terms of like internal systems and rewards and how the dungeon changes on every run, to make sure that every time you play an Ascension meta run, it's going to be unique. Like you have to have that excitement of, I don't know how it's going to come out on the other side. Like I don't know if they're gonna be like dual blade spinning, if I'm gonna be like holy
Hmm.
rosary casting, like what's gonna be happening. And I can't wait to find out. Like I feel this kind of energy is still missing on Ascension right now. And that's what I personally want to play the game on.
Yeah. One thing that does help with that is the corruption system, where you can
Yeah.
be playing a melee build and all of a sudden you get plus 100% projectiles and you're like, well, wait a minute, I'm going to be a projectile build now.
Yeah,
Or,
yeah. I think that's so beautiful. For me, that's the beauty of ARPGs in general, is the itemization and the fact that some really unlikely drops can happen, and
hmm
when they do, they can shape your builds. Like you're playing PoE or you're playing D2, and then you get that item drop that is build defining for maybe a different class, you
hmm
know, and then, oh, I'm gonna reroll right now,
yeah.
you know.
One thing that might help with that for Ascension specifically. So there's 4 outcomes on corruption currently, one of which is do nothing. What do you think of taking away the do nothing for Ascension so your item always changes? It may get better, it may get worse.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea. We already do a lot of stuff for Ascension in terms of items and crafting, which is more wild. So in Ascension, you have more chance of dropping corrupted and review items than you do in campaign and
Hmm.
random. And they have higher chance of being like better. That idea is also cool. Uh, we'll definitely think about that. We're just trying to not introduce like a UX thing where
Hmm.
that's like kind of hidden under the hood and players don't know. But yeah, that's a cool idea.
Yeah. And actually, on that note, how do you feel about clarity of information? Should the UI explain everything that an item does? Should it, let's just say, Ignite, have the actual formula used to calculate Ignite damage? or should some of that information be hidden? Because right now, I think some of it is very clear and transparent, and other things are obscure or hidden.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in full transparency. I think, like I said, I come from like RPG, like tabletop RPG design. I feel like game rules should always be transparent, right? The problem is that video games are not only ultra complex, but also sometimes really weird ways, and also you have like usability considerations, right? And and you don't want to overwhelm newer players as well. It's like a wall of text sometimes. uh, so it's a balancing act. What I can say is that I believe in full transparency, and I always like push for that and strive for that. Sometimes it's hard to do because of usability considerations, because it's going to be just too much that. And sometimes it's hard to do because like it's just technically very hard. For example, you're having sheets DPS perfectly reflecting what's reality. That's so hard to do in RPG because there's so many moving parts and so much stuff that is dynamic. Even for balancing, right? Like people think the ARPG designers have those magic spreadsheets and they balance all the skills and stuff like that. It's really not possible to do that, honestly, because it's so dynamic and it's really hard to compare stuff without using arbitrary rules to do so.
Mm-hmm.
So you end up with just like narrow points of view on what's like, for example, if you deal X damage with a ranged skill, and then you deal Y damage with a melee skill, like which one is better? Because melee is melee, you gotta get closer, right?
Yeah.
Like how much better? Like what is the factor, like the number factor of how much range is better than melee in your game? And it's there's not going to be a single answer because every game is different. It's going to depend on how fast the monsters move and how fast the time to kill on the player is, how fast time to kill the monsters is. It's going to depend on the space that you have to move around, the projectiles that the monsters use. Like there's so many factors to tell like how much safer and better range is compared to melee. Uh, and that is just one thing that I use as an example. There are like hundreds more factors of balance that cannot be easily quantified,
Yes.
right? So you end being very qualitative with a lot of stuff that you do in game balance. Um, so it is like I find it very fascinating and very fun, but it is not like science for
Yeah,
sure.
and I can think of an example from very recent personal experience where Powder Bag Marksman minions ended up a bit OP because there were just a lot of bug fixes. It was, oh, Silver Bullets
Yep.
doesn't work with this at all. So that gets fixed, and the build's still okay. It's not the best, but it works. But then the constellation that gives projectile amount also doesn't work with minions. So then when
Yep.
that gets fixed, all of a sudden they're way stronger because they jump up, they
Yep.
get like a 300% damage multiplier. And then Headless Doll comes in. And then all of a sudden they have another huge damage multiplier. And all these things
And
stack.
headless though is bugs. I just found out today.
Bugged in a way that is giving more damage or less damage.
A lot more damage. So we're gonna have to be very careful about fixing that one. But again, yeah, that's another thing, right? That you don't get with tabletop.
Yeah.
Is you also have the technical side of it where I was seeing the Chris Wilson interview with the Green Dawn director, and
That was excellent.
they that was really really good. Like Chris Wilson makes such a good YouTube. He's OP, he must be nerd. And one thing that I found really like relatable was them talking about like balance changes and technical things and perception of balance.
Mm-hmm.
I think they said something like, "Oh, we had a variable that we would change in multiple patches, and then we will make one change, and then players say it's not good, and then we make another one, and then players, oh, you got it, now it's good, right?" And then like weeks later, we find that the variable wasn't even working to begin with,
Yep.
right? It never did anything. And that is so relatable because these games are very complex, and it is like I said, it's not simple to just like math it out and have like a spreadsheet or a tool that tells you like this is good, this is bad, this is
Yeah.
more deeps than the other thing.
Yes.
You have to test it out.
Like, I tend to be pretty analytical with games, at least when I can. But I'm also pretty sure if you just increased the area of effect for everything in Hellclock and told me you buffed the damage, I would believe you, because
Yep.
anecdotally, my AoEs would be overlapping on packs, so I would feel
Yep.
like I had more damage, even when on single target, I did not actually gain damage except maybe on bombardment.
That was what I did for campaign. So in 1.0, a lot of players were complaining that double knives was OP. Like double knives is better than anything else in Axion. And that made me really confused because I would like I personally played the game a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I could easily like just as easily play X1 with the marksman skills with the bell, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel like double knives was better than the other skills, honestly, in 1.0. And then I started watching a lot of players play on Twitch, especially like more casual players. And I realized that the main thing was that double knives was like no uncapped AoE. And there were huge packs of ags on
Mm-hmm.
Act One, right? There
Yep.
the density is high, especially from the cave section onward. There's a lot of mob density, so players would like have that big AOE and the double knife just mowing everything at once, and they felt like that was a lot better than if they were shooting with split shot or with heaters, stuff like that. But for 1.1, we made changes mostly related to AOE, like split shot got blunderbuss got pierce
Mm-hmm.
by default. We buffed prayer on last prayer on repeater, which is a clear AOE explosion. We increase radius on explosion effects, stuff like that. So everything like got more AOE, and then now people say the melee is bad in X1.
As someone
Now
who,
double knives is
yes,
bad.
as someone who covers ARPGs a lot, I swear the melee class fantasy is that their build is bad.
But from the game development standpoint, what I can tell you is that I think in Hellclock we do a better job at this than any of my other previous games. And what I can tell you is that usually combat designers they hate melee. When you have range and melee in the game, it's really bad for the game designer to design encounters and boss fights and stuff like that to account for the melee character, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes you want to do stuff and you want the player to back away and to move around and to dodge and to you want to manage distance or you want the entire fight to take place at close range the entire time, right? So you have all these considerations, and then the melee player comes in and just want to face tank and bond, right?
Yes.
And it's really difficult to take into consideration. I remember Dungeon Land, we had a lot of issues, and I remember myself as a younger designer thinking like, "Oh God, I wish I could remove the leaf from the game and just make the sword guy troll the swords, and just please."
I mean, with an ARPG, you can do that. Just make everything a Hammerdin. People love Hammerdins.
There you go. Yeah, but there's still like this satisfaction of whacking something, right?
Yeah.
Like throwing the sword is cool, hammering is cool, but there's still that primal satisfaction in just like whacking something with a stick.
Yeah. One game that does that melee balance pretty well is a bullet heaven game called Brotato.
Built data, really.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I'm yet to play that.
Yeah. So what they do to balance it is you can get attack range on your melee weapons very easily. So your melee could, in theory, cover the entire screen.
That's
But
what we're trying to do.
the more attack range you get, the lower your attack rate. So you have to
Okay.
choose,
It's
do I
lower.
want to attack faster in a smaller area or slower in a larger area?
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, in Hellclock, like right now, for example, people are saying, "Oh, 1.1, the bosses got harder, right? The bosses are now much more dangerous than 1.0.
Mm-hmm.
Both the fights got redesigned, and we also have the curse system. So now you actually have to do mechanics in the boss fight, where previously you could just face time. And so now people are saying that playing melee feels illegal in 1.1, and it's funny because like just pick range. Like we have so many options for you to play like melee from a distance, and very cheap. Right, you don't need an item. We put it in the blessing. Like our main melee archetypes are now, which are DK and Lash. They both have huge area of effect increases and blessing as well. So players get to, if they're feeling like uncomfortable with the new replay style, they can just be further away. And also, it's so funny to when you're in endgame with a double knife build, and your double knife is literally the size of the screen. It's
Mm-hmm.
so satisfying.
Yep. Yeah. I do wonder if part of the reason that right now people feel double knives is underpowered is so many are going for bleed specifically, where the play style is you feel super OP and then you feel completely unable to kill anything and then you feel super OP again.
I'm not sure. I don't think so. I think bleed is still a niche. Most players gravitate to lightning. Uh, I think is honestly just like uh, Hellclock is such a different game in a lot of ways. The skill ceiling is higher than it seems at first glance. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of Hellclock specific knowledge that you have to have. And I see a lot of players they misplay very very badly. For example, I was watching Ziz play
Mm-hmm.
Sunday, right? Ziz was playing Hellclock. For the first time in a long time, he played Hellclock. Like he consulted for the game like a couple years ago. The game has drastically changed from that, right?
Yeah.
So he was basically a completely new player on Sunday, right? And he is mechanically skilled. Like he could very easily kite and position himself well and don't get overwhelmed by the mobs and read the boss movements and dodge them, right? All these skills are transferred from the other games that he played. And of course, he knew like the basics of how to build the character and what synergizing with was, so he can actually do that. But all the Hellclock specific things, he failed miserably at, like so bad. Like, and
Mm-hmm.
and that's something that people don't realize. They say, "Oh, like I'm an experienced ARPG player." Like, you don't get more experienced ARPG player than this, right? And but there's some Hellclock specific things that you have to learn, like how the blessings work, how
Mm-hmm.
foundation works,
Yeah.
how to manage your build and your rerolls. Like, there's not another game like Hellclock in that. So those are very Hellclock specific skills that you have to do, and they make a huge difference. And
Yeah.
also manage your time, right, and how you clear the levels and how you go through the level, and how you use, especially how you use the totem, uh, the shrines, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I feel all of these make a huge difference in skill gap. On top of all the other skill gap things that we have because of ARPG systems, right? Which
Yes.
is another thing. Like ARPGs is so hard to balance in terms of difficulty because the knowledge gap between like somebody who has thousands of hours of PoE and somebody who just play Hades and now comes and play Hellclock, the knowledge gap is humongous, right?
Yes.
Uh, uh, so it's really hard to bridge these two audiences in terms of difficulty and challenge. And it's been probably the main headache that I have. It's really frustrating sometimes because uh, um, I think regular mode and veteran mode was a huge step in the right direction, honestly, because it allows me to have that. But it's still like you're gonna have to patch the engine a little bit now. I'm working on patch 1.1.1 for this week to address like difficulty issues if people getting stuck. And
Mm-hmm.
it's really hard. Like sometimes you move a single dial, and suddenly the casual players are stuck, and then you move a little bit more to the left, and now the veteran players are saying the game's too easy, and it's a challenge to say the
Yeah.
least.
I can definitely see that. I think I had a relatively lucky time playing Hellclock. Originally, it was the demo, so that went to floor 14, I'd like to say. I felt it was relatively easy, and I suspect that's because I've played a lot of ARPGs. I have like 10,000 hours in Path of Exile 1 alone, 1,000 plus in Diablo 3, probably 1,000 in D4, a couple hundred in Grim Dawn. Actually, not quite a couple hundred, like 100 something. 1,000 in Last Epoch. But then I also have thousands of hours in roguelikes. I've got between Hades and Hades 2, 500 hours. I have like 300 hours in Brotato, 100 plus hours in Vampire Survivors. So I had all of this knowledge
Your
from
whole my whole life was leading up to this.
kind of, yeah, it's like, oh, this is perfect. This is all the things that I know.
Yeah.
And for some things, there was still a learning curve. Like, for the longest time, I thought the relics you get are based on the skills you had in your bar. So I was literally changing the skills on my bar to get better
Oh.
relics in the shop. I did not know about the affinity system until I found the wiki page. But a lot of stuff like progression I was more familiar with, and I was like, okay, I know how this is going to go. I know what I can do here to influence that later.
There you go. There you go. But yeah, like it's complicated, and honestly, one of the most difficult things is making a challenging game. Like we're trying
Mm-hmm.
to make Healthbox be a challenging game, in the sense that provides a fair challenge and like a cool puzzles for people to
Mm-hmm.
solve, right? As they're
Yeah.
progressing and feeling like that they're progressing and achieving something and solving their builds and stuff like that. So you gotta have the friction of the challenge there, otherwise the fantasy just crumbles, right? Um, but it's so hard to do that as like a more unknown studio, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because what I realized about players in 2025 is that, and that's perfectly understandable, by the way. I'm not like crying about it, but it's like players, they go like something feels like a barrier to them, like they keep dying to a boss or they don't feel like they're progressing the character anymore. And the first thing that they think is, this game is not well balanced. These devs do not play their own game. This is bugged, and there's something wrong with this game, right? Which is honestly, with so much trash on Steam these days, it's perfectly reasonable for you to think, right? Because we as like Rogue, right, the studio, we need to build that trust, right? Players need to trust us that we actually play our game, that we actually balance the game. So whenever they have these kinds of experiences, they can be like safe in thinking, oh, let me invest my time and my energy into figuring this out because it will pay off. Like what's actually happening is that players don't trust us, so they don't feel safe in investing that time and that energy to quote unquote hit good, you know?
Yeah.
It's different if they play like a From game. They know, like if some boss from a From game is killing them over and over, they don't think, "Fuck these devs, this game is so bad, it's so unbalanced. They don't even play test this." You know, they know that these guys are like the best at it. So they probably are the issue, but most importantly, it's not like the fault of Git Gear, the skill issue, any of these kind of bullshit. It's just like they feel safe that okay, if I invest my time and energy, I will get better and I will overcome this because this is well made, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like we are slowly trying to gain that trust. We're still not there yet, so sometimes it's frustrating because sometimes I feel like if players just trust us a little bit, they can get over the challenge, right? But
Mm-hmm.
they just default to like the game is unbalanced, the game is bad, the game is bugged, which sometimes it is, admittedly, right? We're not from, we're still learning as developers, right? We're still getting better. Uh, but we hope to grow together, right? Not only
Yeah.
grow as a studio and making the game better and more balanced and more fair, right? But also gaining the trust of players. So whenever we are able to challenge them more. To me, that is the thing that I look forward the most personally, is getting to a point with our audience where they trust us enough that we can do more challenging stuff, you know? Because
Yeah.
sometimes we have to hold ourselves back a little bit because otherwise it's not going to work.
Yeah. I think it was right before No Rest for the Wicked went into early access. Thomas Mahler, who's the studio head for Moon Studios, made Ori No Rest for the Wicked, was talking about something very similar. And he was talking about visual clarity, where if a player gets hit by an attack and they don't know why the attack hit them, they're going to say, oh, that attack is bullshit. But if they can
Yeah.
see the enemy sword arcing through the air and see the exact point in that arc where it hit them, they go, oh yeah, my bad. I should probably dodge that. And
Yeah,
that's,
100%.
yeah.
100%. That's something that I learned very soon in my career and that I do in all my games is that, uh, do you know about ghost jumping in platforming games?
A little bit.
Yeah, so for everybody else, ghost jumping basically means that because games have latency built into them because of the inputs that you do and also your television and stuff like that, but also the human brain on purpose, right?
Mhm.
So sometimes in platformers, when you're about to jump off from the very edge of a platform and you press the jump button, sometimes either because of your own brain or because of latency, it ends up that you press the button and you feel like you pressed when you were in the platform. But for the game engine, you're already on the air, so your character does not jump; it just falls down like a rock. So a lot of great platformers they implement a system where you have a few milliseconds of leeway after you leave a platform while you're still allowed to jump, right? And that makes them feel more responsive and more fair, which is ironic but because you're basically cheating on the favor of the player, right? But
Hmm.
it does feel more fair. And what I have been doing in my career overall is that, and I always tell like, whenever somebody new joins the team, there's something I always tell them to do, is hey, like whenever you have like collider or like an indicator or anything that is like pro player, it's in the benefit of the player, make it like 10%, 15% bigger. So like the visual collider of your attack, for example, and the actual collision is a little bit bigger. And the opposite for enemies. Like whenever an enemy projectile or an enemy lash or stuff like that, make it like 10%, 15% smaller. So that way it feels fair, right?
Hmm.
Even though you're kind of cheating a little bit, you get those edge cases, and you really don't get, you feel less rods.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I've seen a lot of games and a lot of videos on games talking about that exact same thing where most games will cheat just slightly in the player's favor
Yep.
to
Yep.
avoid something feeling unfair.
A funny thing is also RNG.
Hmm.
We don't really do that in Hellcock because like the game is about RNG, so
Hmm.
yeah, it is what it is. But for example, when I was working on Chroma Squad, which is a tactical RPG, we had some of those XCOM moments where you
Hmm.
have like 95% chance and then you
Hmm.
fail, right?
Yep.
I mean, 95% is not 100. Like you're going to fail 5% of the time, which is a
Yep.
lot. It's 1 in 20. It's not 5% is a lot. Like if you tell me, oh, we're gonna meet this surgery, there's 95% chance you're gonna survive. Like, oh, what the
Uh,
fuck?
yeah,
I'm
that's
not
scary.
gonna. That's very scary. I'm not gonna sleep until the surgery, thinking about like gonna write a goodbye letter because I know I have a 5% chance of dying, right? But for
Yeah.
video games, like if they see the 95% and it doesn't happen, like the game is broken and they're so frustrated, right? So
Hmm.
funnily enough, and I can say this now because it's like 10 years later, so who cares? Like 95% in Chroma Squad is actually 100%. Like we actually made that change and it was positive. Like players were just like the overall sentiment about the game just improved.
Yeah.
So we just made that
Hmm.
cheats under the hood. We never told players about that, and it just made the overall sentiment about the game better. So it's just like humans, we're very emotional beings, right? And
Yeah.
what's beautiful about design, not only game design but design in general, what made me fall in love with design is it's science, it is technology, it is engineering, but it's all in service of human emotion. And I think that's like it's one of the most cool things you can do in terms of like a professional activity because you just like the full spectrum of humanity there, right?
Yeah.
And it's really cool.
Oh yeah. Because at the end of the day, it's not about if the game does the math perfectly. It's about is it fun to play. That
Exactly. How does that make you
yeah.
feel, right?
Yeah. So let's end something a little bit more fun, or I should say a little less serious, because I've had a lot of fun so far. What are a few things that you or someone else on the team came up with that were just so crazy that you couldn't implement it in Hell Clock, or something where everyone's like, this is awesome, we'd love to do it, but technically it was too difficult and so it didn't make it into the game?
Right. Basically, everything that Felipe comes up with, the other designer, just kidding. But he tends to have some wild ideas, especially on the system side.
Mhm.
Uh, but we cut a lot of like skill blasters, like items. Like there was this insane power creep that we ended up cutting. But I think the more iconic things that you, and this happens in production, right? You just biting more than you can chew constantly in game
Mhm.
development. We wanted to do a homage to the secret cow level in Diablo 2. So that would be the secret Cabra level. So Cabra is basically the Brazilian goat,
Mhm.
and it's very associated with Northeast Brazil. So having like demonic cabras, bipedal cabras, like with knives and stuff coming at you would be really funny. Uh, we wanted to do that. We had to credit for the base game. We wanted to do that for the expansion. We had to credit for the expansion.
Oh no.
Maybe one day we can have our secret cabras, but unfortunately they're not coming anytime soon.
Well, maybe someday, or maybe they're already in the game and
And
you're just
nobody
messing with me
discovered
right
them
now.
yet. Yeah.
And it's so well hidden.
I would love to do something like that, honestly. I don't know, like we have a Mad Martian representative here. I don't know if the folks are gonna be happy to know that we're spending a lot of resources into something nobody ever found out. But honestly, I think that's super cool. Like, I would love to do that at some point.
Yeah,
We done some stuff like that in Chroma Squad. Uh, like VHold Studios was really fun working there in Chroma Squad, and we had a basically full creative freedom to do any kind of wacky nonsense that we wanted to do. We
that's
put a
awesome.
lot of Easter eggs and a lot of crazy stuff, and also like the games are simple. That's another thing that I don't think there's fully realized is that older games they were so much more simple, and when you can get stuff done so much more simply and faster, you get to put a lot more crazy stuff in it or sequels and stuff like that. In modern game development, doing like in the 90s, like just making like a corridor and putting a monster in there, something like that was so simple, right? In any
Hmm.
game. Compared to like in modern gaming, I'm not even talking about triple A, even for indie, but triple A is just crazy, right? Just
Hmm.
making a corridor with a couple monsters in there. You probably need like 40 people in 3 different departments, have a green light on this, and like overworking stress producers are gonna look at you ugly. And you know, and they just want to put an extra quarter in the game, and it's so hard, right? Because games have become so complex and technology is so complex, right? So that's mostly why, like, Thomas Squad is such a simple game, and it was very easy for us to just add walking nonsense on an afternoon, and that's it. Like, and Hell Clock compared to AAA game is way simpler. Like, it's probably the same difference between Hell Clock and Thomas Squad is the difference between Hell Clock and any AAA game, right? It's
Yeah,
just like an order of magnitude of different complexity there. But
yeah.
yeah, like with all that said, like I hope that we're still gonna put some walking nonsense in the game.
Well, I'm looking forward to the wacky nonsense then. I do think that actually calls back to Vampire Survivors from the beginning, because that's also a very simple game, and they have put quite a bit of wacky nonsense in with the DLCs.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's why I think it's so cool, for example, for Kojima to do all the walking nonsense he does in his games. You, but
Oh,
basically in AAA, it you have to be him, right? You have to be somebody who has such a strong name that management is going to trust him to do this kind of crazy nonsense, you know?
well, I think in that case he is the management, at least these days.
Exactly. Like
Yeah.
you have to have that kind of director power, which is another thing I think games need more overall. I think in indie space you have that, right? You
Hmm.
usually have one or a few like very strong creative voices that can get to do stuff their way for better work, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like in AAA video games, they feel so corporate right now and so soulless for the most part because they don't have that. Whenever a game like a AAA game does have that, it's just so different. Like for
Hmm.
example, God of War, right? Where Cory Barlog, he seems to have like a really strong grip on that game, and it shows. Like the game has soul. You know, it's one of the few AAA games that you feel that it doesn't feel like a corporate spreadsheet check mark simulator. You know,
Yeah.
and it's really hard to get that.
Yeah, I mean Yoko Taro's games as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Veneer
yeah,
series. You feel it. Like that guy has put a ton into each title.
yeah, yeah. So you have that all for feel to
Yeah.
the game. You know, I wish at some point the AAA industry goes there and takes risks on directors, right?
Yeah.
And give directors. For example, Diablo 4 had like what? More than 4 different directors? Maybe the true 4 was the number of game directors they had along the way, right?
Could very well be. I mean, I thought it was third time the charm, but clearly not.
But yeah, man, it's how do you make a game like that? It's really hard. It's really
Yeah.
challenging.
I mean, that's probably why I remember one of my earliest thoughts on D4 was, wait a minute, is this supposed to be an MMO and an ARPG? It's kind of trying to do both at once and failing at both as a result.
You know, it's so hard, and you can see you can when you play games like Diablo 4, you can feel the history, right? You can feel like like this was probably done back when the time the game was heading in a different direction,
Mm-hmm.
and then this was done in the new direction. And then management people are okay, man,
Mm-hmm.
we did this,
Yeah.
and it's rough. It's rough. Like I feel bad for the team because it's so hard to work like that.
Yeah.
And at Blizzard, they have some of the best talent in the world, right? And they certainly get tested and stuff like that.
Yeah. But at the same time, there's a lot of people who are leaving AAA and going out doing their own stuff, like Guillaume, the lead director for Expedition 33. He used to work for Ubisoft. He left, and
Yep.
now he's made one of the most authored video games to come out in the past 10 years. Like, you can
Yep.
feel his creative touch. You can feel the writing, everything. There's a person behind all of it. It is an intentional choice, and that matters.
Yeah, of course, man. Like when, like if you, I don't know the history. They probably might have pitched to a bunch of different publishing universities, stuff like that. Like I would bet my house that every single publisher or investment meeting of Expedition would tell them like, there's no way that anybody wants to play a turn-based JRPG in 2025. Like this game is gonna bomb. Like this game is not gonna be popular. Right? It's impossible. Same thing about Baldur's Gate. Like a nerdy turn-based D&D game is gonna be the most popular game of the year. Like no way. You know?
Yeah.
It just keeps happening. It just keeps happening. And unfortunately, like we when I say we, I say game creators and people who actually genuinely care about video games. We let our industry get uh, conquered and dominated by these suits, right? These people from the financial market, people sometimes from the casino industry. We let these people run the business because we're just like big kids. We just want to make fun stuff. We don't want to worry about the business things. So we put these assholes in command, and it's just ruining everything.
Yeah.
It's just ruining everything. And I really wish that more people get the memo that if you keep chasing just the money and just avoiding risk, like the riskiest thing you can do in the entertainment industry is avoiding risk. Because if you're playing it safe, you're boring. Like you're not gonna get an Expedition 33 by playing safe. Like you need to let wild people do wild things. It's gonna be garbage 99% of the time, but the 1% of the time that it isn't is gonna pay for itself 1,000 times. Yeah, so
Oh yeah, and I mean, From Software is a perfect example of this. A lot of their early games were garbage, and yet you can look back and there were some gems in there.
I remember the Sony executive played Demon Souls and said it was a shit. Like this game is a really, really shit game. And maybe sometimes I don't know who is the hero responsible for actually having both Demon Souls and Dark Souls released at that time, and trusting From Software. But yeah, like those are very clear examples of games that, in theory, if you're pitching in a boardroom, they would never get dealing with. They would never, like, people never believe they would do it.
Yep. But yeah, I'd say that's a good, somewhat hopeful note to end on.
There you go, just like Health Club. Angry and then a hopeful note in the end.
Yeah, so thank you very much for coming on. It's been great, and hey, maybe we'll chat again in the future.
Yeah, I wish. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure, and hope to talk to you again in the future. Thank you.
And so that was my interview with Mark Venturelli. Big thanks both to him and the team over at Mad Mushroom for helping to make this possible. I had a blast. I love discussing all sorts of random topics. Yes, we did talk quite a bit about Hellclock, but we also spent time talking about Vampire Survivors, difficult games, and plenty of other stuff. So if you enjoyed it, do be sure to leave a like. Also, get subscribed because I'd love to do this again in the future, and I'll be on the lookout for more opportunities. For now, thank you very much for watching to the end. I'm glad you enjoyed. If you need some guides for Hellclock, I've got plenty on the channel. I'll leave some videos down below. Also, if you want written guides, you want to know about all the systems, head over to MaxwellGG. That'll be down there as well. For now, I'm going to get going. Thanks again for watching to the end. I'll see you in the next one.